I'm John Wilander. I have a daytime job managing a team in security and privacy in Silicon Valley. And then I have this nighttime job, actually early morning job, as an author. And I write novels where hackers are the heroes. And that led me into this thing where I really feel hackers and people like us who care about cybersecurity and these kind of things, even in conflicts, we deserve a place in pop culture. So I started digging into this, like, is there only a handful of movies or is there more out there? So I'm going to take you through that today. So how early is this guy going to go back? Where does hacker fiction start? End of World War II. So this is the timeline. This is where we start here. This, 1945, is when Isaac Asimov published his first short story that eventually made it into the collection called I, Robot. And some of you might know that he established these laws of robotics to keep them safe. First law is that robots are not allowed to harm humans, not even by being passive. Second law is that robots need to obey humans as long as that doesn't violate the first law. And third, they need to try to survive themselves unless that violates the two first laws. And going back to this and why this was a kind of a hacker thing, if you read those short stories, he's exploring flaws in those three laws. How can it still go wrong even if you follow those three laws? This, of course, made it into a very popular movie 60 years later, directed by Alex Proyas. And interestingly, the character there, Dr. Susan Calvin, who is the chief robo-psychologist, she is playing kind of a side role in the movie, but she is more of the main character of those short stories. And she is kind of the hacker trying to figure out how to circumvent the flaws in the robots that emerge between those three laws. So that's my starting point. That's where I view this thing starting. Okay, going further here, we get to 1948, The Sentinel. Another classic sci-fi author here, Arthur C. Clarke. The reason why this relates to hacker fiction, I will get to shortly, and it happened in 1961. But before then, on the non-fiction side of things, this is where we got Cybernetics, a book called Cybernetics, or Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine, exploring kind of cyborg things, information theory, feedback loops, how you can control biological beings and such. And a lot of inspiration for fiction that eventually came was related to this very seminal book. 1956, third sci-fi novelist here, Philip K. Dick, publishes The Minority Report, which of course made it into a movie much, much later. Very interesting is that the hack, you might recall, how many have seen the movie Minority Report? Yeah, it's very popular. So you might remember there are three precogs who are predicting the near future so that they can have pre-crime and prevent crimes before they happen. And the Minority Report is about when those three precogs don't agree. Two are voting one way and one is the odd one out. The Minority Report. And I won't spoil the hacks, but the hack in that short story from 1956 is actually cooler than the one in the movie. So I encourage you to go read it. This is around the time where this fella entered the scene, eventually got a handle Joy Bubbles, 7-year-old blind boy who happened to have perfect pitch and discovered that whistling into the phone could control the American phone system. This is the advent of phreaking, or hacking the phone system, for instance, to get free national calls. And that later developed to a friend of his, who later took the handle Captain Crunch. Now we're getting into like the original hackers here. John Draper. He discovered that a special whistle in the cereal brand Captain Crunch produced that exact pitch, so you could use it even if you didn't have perfect pitch yourself to hack the phone system in the US. And this, of course, spread, and people were going after buying these serials only to get the whistle and to be able to make free calls. There's an excellent documentary, the link here at archive.org, that you can go check out, and it tells this original history and then going forward. Okay, back to the timeline here. So now we get to why the Sentinel was important. It was the basis for the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which of course features the computer and AI HAL 9000, and there's this conflict between the computer and the humans, and eventually the humans have to hack and disable the AI to be able to survive. 1966, less known author here, T.F. Jones, wrote a book, Colossus, that's highly relevant today. It's fascinating when you read this kind of stuff. It became a movie already in 1970, so that's that arrow. This one, the premise of this book is that the superpowers of the day, of course, the Soviet Union and the US, both establish supercomputer AI that are tasked to establish and maintain world peace. And to do that, they get access to the nuclear weapons arsenal so that they can threaten and deter. And then you can kind of tell where it goes from there, right? When these computers that are much more intelligent in some way than humans start discovering that humans have flaws. Well, if I take over here, I can maintain peace, and that's my main task. And these two supercomputers discover each other and start talking. It's a very fascinating early hacker fiction. 1968, Philip K. Dick publishes Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And this is the book that later gave us the Blade Runner movie. So that wraps up the early days. We get to the 1970s, counterculture. A lot fewer dots here on this timeline. But in 1972, we got The Terminal Man by Michael Crichton. This is about connecting computers to brains and controlling the mind, that kind of thing. Later, he became a very famous author because he wrote Jurassic Park. So that became his kind of most famous work. Then I just want to mention The Conversation here, movie by Francis Ford Coppola. This goes much more into privacy than security, but it's a fascinating movie about 70s technology and trying to surveil people, record. That's why it's called The Conversation. They're trying to record a conversation that's ongoing, people who are moving and then stitching it together and figuring out what was said and why did these people say this. Very fascinating. Also great because it's from the era where movies didn't have to have a happy ending. So this movie's pretty dark. 1975, we get to a point where you have the home computer revolution starting. So you have the homebrew computer club in Silicon Valley. At the same time, you have the punk rock rise, both in New York and the UK, around 74 to 76. And this was the origin of cyberpunk. Turns out that it was coined in 1980 by a man called Bruce Bethke. Once I learned about this, I actually tracked him down and emailed him. He still works in the tech space. He's working on supercomputers. And he explained that, yeah, it was cyber from cybernetics, and then punk, which was super cool back then. And he envisioned that hackers would be kind of punks. And that's how he combined the two into cyberpunk. He also told me, yeah, my original short story called Cyberpunk is still out there on the web. And I hadn't found it. I don't know about search indexes, but something made me not find it. But he gave me the link, so you can go check it out. It is absolutely straight up cyberpunk, with good banter, a lot of nerdy stuff going on, and pretty forward-looking stuff. So it's an example of something I review in my newsletter. I try to track these kind of things down and write about them. So going forward here, back to the timeline, 1981, another giant in this space enters, William Gibson. Publishes 2 short stories that are really meaningful in this year. First, the one Burning Chrome. That one did not become a movie, but it's where he introduces the term cyberspace. There were two Danish artists back in the 60s, I believe, who also used the term cyberspace, but it had nothing to do with technology and computers. It was an artsy thing. So he was the one who coined the modern term cyberspace. And then, of course, the short story Johnny Mnemonic made it into a movie in 1995. And I was happy to see that we have a company here named Mnemonic, too. Made me happy. So 1982, we get Blade Runner. I already mentioned Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That's where that ended up. But we also got the Tron movie. 83, now we get the first real movie with straight-up hackers in the leading role, WarGames. I still remember when I watched this the first time and how we were debating in the playground whether floppy disks or hard drives were better. That's the extent of how we understood this kind of stuff back then. But it introduces the first of three archetypes when it comes to hackers in movies. And this archetype I call the accidental hacker, meaning someone who wasn't really after hacking into the military systems, stumbled upon them, and then the story unfolds. This also takes us to the first trope, the nerd. And of course, there are plenty of nerds among us, so I don't have a problem with hackers being portrayed as nerds. But when we're always portrayed as nerds, it gets a little tired. So I just want to point out here that the uber nerd in the WarGames movie is this person, Eddie Deezer, and he was pigeonholed by Hollywood. Yeah, you always play the nerd. Because he was also the nerd in Grease, and he was the nerd in Polar Express, playing the know-it-all kid, with his very nasal voice, that kind of stuff. So he's the uber nerd of Hollywood. Okay, back to the timeline here. 1984, Neuromancer, really setting the stage here for cyberpunk novels by William Gibson. Epic story. In 1989, we get a spy novel, The Cuckoo's Egg, which involves computers and hacking, and this is where the manga Ghost in the Shell is published. Okay, that takes us to the last reference going forward here, of course, the movie Ghost in the Shell, which indicates that 1995 may be a special year in hacker fiction. 1990s, hackers go mainstream. Oh yeah, 1995 is the best year so far for hacker fiction. But 1992 was not too shabby. We got Snow Crash from Neil Stephenson, which introduced the metaverse that we heard a lot about a few years ago when then Facebook became Meta, and we're going to go all in on the metaverse. We also got the movie Sneakers, which introduced the second of the three archetypes of hackers in movies. These are the professional hackers, pen testers. Great movie, Robert Redford in the lead role. I love the character Whisper, I believe his character is named. A blind man who does audio hacking, can listen to audio signals in networks and such. And we got this. Now, this blows my mind, and it's actually a photo of my copies. We got comics about hackers. Has only happened once. We're only 12 issues ever issued, and these are the ones. But the Hacker Files, that's how mainstream it started to become, to have stories about hackers and those kind of intrigues. Okay, that's 1992. Now let's have a look at that epic year, 1995. First out, Bruce Bethke, who coined the term cyberpunk, got into this decade-long argument with his publisher, so that original full-length story was never published. They were trying to force him to change it to be much more mainstream. He wanted it to be this punk kind of thing. And so he has it as a PDF, but that's like, if you know him, you can get access to it. But in 1995, he actually published a full-length novel called Head Crash. And do we have any people from Gothenburg here today? A few? You might enjoy this slightly more than the rest of the audience. I'll now read you the subtitle of this novel. The laptop novel with a CD-ROM drive. That is CD-ROM drive, not CD-ROM drive. We also got the movie Hackers. Angela Jolie, great character in this movie. A lot of legendary quotes that we still use in the hacker community today comes from here. And these guys were really punk in that original sense, the banter among them, the way they looked and behaved. So I really like it in that sense. We also got The Net, which is a straight-up action thriller with Sandra Bullock. This is where some of you might recall there was the pi sign in the corner of a web page, and if you click that, you got to some secret part of the web page, and the story unfolded. And this is where we get the movie Johnny Mnemonic, cyberpunk with Keanu Reeves, Ice-T, the rapper, and Dolph Lundgren. If you've not watched this, you need to watch this thing. It's great. Which brings us to the next trope. Typing fast. You've seen this in these movies, right? Oh, such a great hacker. Right? And it brings us to another movie that came out in 1995, GoldenEye. I love me some Bond movies, but here the hacker to the left, Boris, is often typing super fast, and it's supposed to convey, oh, he's a great hacker. Interesting with this movie is that you have two hackers fighting each other. To the right here, you have Natalia, of course, the actor, Swedish actor Isabella Scorupco, and they're fighting each other. So that's a kind of a novel thing in hacker fiction going on here. And the last movie in this epic year in hacker fiction actually got this typing fast trope right. And it's this one. This is where we get Ghost in the Shell, the anime. And I actually have animated GIFs to show you how they got this right. So I hope I can click to start this. So first, if you're going to type fast, you need to be a cyborg. And then this is how you type fast. So that wraps up 1995. Great year for hacker fiction. And I hope at this point you've already gotten some good inspiration for this summer. Like maybe I should be reading some of these books or watching some of these movies. 1996, Mission Impossible. Tom Cruise hacking while hanging off of a thread from the ceiling. And that brings us to the final trope, password screens. You almost want to just look away, have a sip of your beverage until it's over when it shows up in these kind of movies. This is the password screen from Mission Impossible. 6-character, 5-character password to enter this super secret system. And so often it's like, hey, you just walk up to the computer and then you guess the password. Oh, I got it right. Or you try 3 times. And it's not like hacking doesn't work that way, as we all know. Okay, just on the nonfiction side, I was talking about how the 90s is where hackers went mainstream. This is where you have the hacker group Loft testifying or being questioned by the US Senate. And they were explaining that the state of internet security is dismal. We can hack it within hours, take the whole thing down. So really here it was starting to be on people's minds that we need to improve security. And I can only assume that a lot of you here have great jobs these days because it was started to get noted that we can't go on like this. And then we get to 1999. We get first Cryptonomicon from Neil Stephenson, Act of the Apostles by an indie author named John F.X. Sundman, an American who actually has heritage from Sweden. That's why his name's Sundman. Great book, kind of 90s style. Again, a lot of banter, a lot of F-bombs dropped in that one. A great book. But of course, we also got The Matrix. So now we're entering the deep dive. Now I'm giving you an impression of the kind of stuff I write when I write these long newsletter issues and go really deep on something in hacker fiction. So let's talk about the Matrix. And here I will be showing some images that are copyright Warner Brother pictures. First out, as is often the case in Hollywood, there were multiple movies in a very similar genre, but they were just not as good as The Matrix, so almost no one talks about them anymore. Dark City, great movie. Existence, and The 13th Floor, which really has this about a virtual world plus the reality kind of thing going on. But of course, going into this movie starts in medias res, which means starts with action immediately. We have this scene with Trinity. Some cops show up. You have the 360-degree camera movement. She's kicking ass, more or less literally, in this scene. I just remember how it blew my mind. Eventually, we get to see this Mr. Anderson, who has some corporate computer job, probably some kind of hacker in his spare time, and his personal computer at home gets hacked, and he gets this message. Wake up, Neo. The Matrix has you. Follow the white rabbit. Knock, knock, Neo. So a few friends show up at his apartment. There's a girl there with a white rabbit on her shoulder. He follows them to a club, and there he meets Trinity. And she explains to him that you've been thinking about something. You're wondering what the Matrix is. There's a person named Morpheus who can help you answer the question, what is the Matrix? But you need to follow his instructions. There's an interesting dialogue going on here because Mr. Anderson realizes that Trinity is this famous hacker. And he refers to it as, oh, you're the one who cracked the IRS D-base. And I think, so IRS is the tax authority in the US, so that one's pretty simple. And D-base, I guess, is just a database and some lingo in there. So a reference to her past as a hacker. Morpheus tries to help Neo, Mr. Anderson, who eventually becomes Neo. But he refuses to take their help and is captured by the agents. You might remember Mr. Smith. They place a tracer bug. You remember, it goes in through his belly button. And they explain that he's now bugged. These agents are in this world that he believes is reality. They've placed something in him, and they want him to help them get to Morpheus. So this tells us that this Morpheus figure is able to move around in this world, and they can't follow him, so they need to place this thing in Mr. Anderson to find Morpheus. Eventually, Trinity breaks him loose. They extract the tracing bug from his belly, and he gets to meet Morpheus. We have the classic scene with the two pills. I can never remember which one you're supposed to take. Do you? Both. Yeah, that's a good one. Anyway, Morpheus explains that the Matrix is a prison for your mind. And I'm offering you here that you could exit if you want to. You can take the blue pill and go back to your existing life, or you can take the red pill and exit and see the Matrix for what it really is. My view of this is that this red pill that gets you to see reality is kind of a little bit what a lot of us have experienced. Because we know so much about the reality of security on the internet and similar, that we know how fragile certain things are, right? That's why a lot of us work in this industry too, right? That we want to make things better, and then we just know that the rest of the population is largely unaware of the situation out there. Morpheus explains that this pill is a trace program that disrupts his I/O carrier signal. So now we're starting to get into the technical details of what is this matrix. So we're starting to understand that, okay, the matrix is software. That tracer bug is also software. The agents are software. And this pill that he got is disrupting some kind of signal to his real physical self somewhere. So in this model here that I'm slowly building up here, you can imagine you have all these characters up there, And what this pill supposedly is going to do for Mr. Anderson is let him exit the matrix and get into reality. And then we get to see that, yeah, he wakes up in one of these cocoons. He's been have this plug-in to his brain. That's probably the whole carrier signal thing going on there. It's been disrupted, gets disconnected, and he gets to move into reality and meets Morpheus and Trinity there again. Then we get to see the awesome computer rig. Love this kind of stuff, except for the keyboard floating in the air. Like, who would have a keyboard like that? No stability. Anyway, they explain a little bit here. They say, well, we're on this ship, Nebuchadnezzar, and this is the core where we broadcast our pirate signal and hack into the Matrix. So they are able to get back to the Matrix from reality whenever they want, leveraging this phone system. And the phones keep coming back. Trinity, in the beginning, she exits after kicking those cops. She exits through a landline phone. And so I've been thinking about the bandwidth of this 90s phone technology for a full-on virtual reality. It doesn't really sound plausible. Maybe the machines figure that out, but maybe this is just some kind of authentication system, and then there's more of a broadband connection in some other place. They also get an explanation here that when the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside who was able to change whatever he wanted to remake the Matrix as he saw fit. So looking at this could be some kind of backdoor situation in this software, or someone who has kernel access and can change whatever he wants. And we are introduced to the Oracle, who says that this man will return at some point. And the Oracle is able to predict what's going to happen, or maybe happen, in the Matrix. So I've been thinking about maybe she's part of the operating system scheduler, or she could even be part of the CPU doing speculative execution, knowing that it's very probable that these opcodes are going to run shortly. And this is when we get into the agents. What are they doing here? Well, they are able to take people in the Matrix and take over them and kind of become them. And this, to me, sounds like code injection, right? They probably have higher privileges, and they can inject themselves and take over a piece of software and execute themselves, or a process in the Matrix. So the agents can move in and out of any software, and they refer to it as long as the software is hardwired to their system. So we're arriving at a model kind of like this, where maybe the Oracle is part of the CPU or the scheduler, a really like microkernel thing. The agent has kernel access and can take over software in the Matrix, user space if you want. We get to the classic scene where they're sparring. This is when Morpheus is trying to make Neo realize that you can bend the rules, you can hack the Matrix. I think what he's trying to do here is to tell Neo that you actually have kernel access. You just need to realize that you can do what the agents are doing. You don't have to live by the rules in user space. So they are like this, and they decide that we're going to go talk to the Oracle to see if Neo is the one who can actually break the Matrix and win over the machines. Morpheus, she tells Neo that Morpheus will sacrifice his life to save yours, and you have a choice. Either you try to save Morpheus, or you can live on yourself. Sounds like a logical choice. The real underlying thing here is that if he is able to hack the Matrix, he could go for a third option and have them both live. So he has a logical choice with two possible outcomes, but can he bend the rules and pick a third choice? We get to the cat scene, where we heard that déjà vu is when the agents change the Matrix. They're trying to exit through a phone line again to get back to reality, but the agents show up, they try to escape through the wall. Eventually, Morpheus realizes, hey, I gotta stall the agents. He knocks through the wall with his head and starts fighting them. He's sacrificing himself to let Neo live. And they capture him, and they're saying they're breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time. Not 100% there, but okay, let's go with it. They're trying to hack Morpheus's brain, the agents are. And then they're talking about what they're after. Every captain, like Morpheus, has access code to Zion's mainframe, which is what the agents are after. This is where Trinity and Neo decide we're going in, we're going to hack the Matrix, we're going to save Morpheus. We need guns, lots of guns. You get into a bunch of fighting scenes, a lot of shooting. This is where Neo starts behaving as if he has higher privileges. He can move super fast, dodge bullets. Eventually, all but Neo make it out through a phone line again, back into reality. He's stuck in the Matrix and has to fight the agents himself. He gets shot, dies, wakes up, and now he has discovered, I have privileges. I can do more. So he's able to see through the Matrix. This is just software. I can deal with this. And he eventually runs into the agent, Smith, breaks into him and takes over him. So he does code injection into the agent process. So he probably has even higher privileges than that the agents have. So that's how you end up with this kind of the model of the Matrix and how I think this could actually work in reality. And I'm not the only one, this is Neo taking over the agent, I'm not the only one who's used this as a hacker movie. There's this great Wired article where they're arguing The Matrix is the best hacker movie ever. So you can go check that out. Okay, I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to rush through the last of my timeline, 2000 until today. So we got a bunch of movies here, some of them not so great. We had Swordfish, that got a lot of flack because the hacker is buff, like muscular. But nowadays we have this hack for health kind of thing going on. So I don't know, maybe today it's more okay. We got a movie called Cypher. This is where we got the Minority Report movie with Tom Cruise. 2003 is when the anonymous hacktivist collective is formed. We get the iRobot movie I already mentioned, and also one called Paranoia 1.0. And we get V for Vendetta, and for all you Swedes here, the girl with the dragon tattoo, or Män som hatar kvinnor, by Stieg Larsson. And the V for Vendetta is the connection back to the Anonymous collective, right? Because they eventually picked up the Guy Fawkes mask, a way to actually be anonymous in the streets. We get to 2006. This is where the author Daniel Suarez publishes his book Demon, which got super popular, globally so. But he was an indie author, and he went the route through bloggers and gamers to actually get people to pay attention. And he did that so successfully that it got on the New York Times bestseller list. True indie, just finding people who wanted to read this kind of stuff. We get a Die Hard movie that features hackers. Little Brother from Cory Doctorow comes out. I think he's published at least 2 more books in this series. 2011, we got some good stuff. We got the international release of the Stieg Larsson story, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is when Ready Player One was published as a book. And we got the movie Source Code. Kind of questionable on the hacking side. There's some smartphone downloading some flash files. So yeah, okay, they kind of got something right there. But and you know, back then, 2011, that was all the rave in web hacking, right, with flash files. And eventually, Daniel Suarez published another one. Now we're getting into modern times. So he's in this book, Kill Decision. He's exploring autonomous military systems that can kill without a human being involved. And he later gave a TED talk on that topic based on having written about what may come in the future. Going forward, we had the Snowden disclosures in 2013. Then this is where we got the book The Circle that eventually became a movie in 2017. Got The Imitation Game, about Alan Turing's hacking or breaking of the Enigma. Interesting here is that The Imitation Game, the title of that movie, is actually the title of the research paper that defines the Turing test and has nothing to do with the Enigma. They just chose to combine the two. There was a movie called The Signal. 2015, we get Black Hat the movie, but also Mr. Robot. The most realistic fictional hacker stuff. It's a TV series. Great. Spend a lot of time with Mr. Robot. And of course, this is where The Mask also makes it into fiction. They have their own version of it, but very, very similar to Guy Fawkes. And sadly, the trope, black hoodie. A little bit tired of that one. Maybe I should have worn one today. Going back here, Snowden becomes a nonfiction movie. And this is a book that I've reviewed in my newsletter, written by Anna L. Davis. It is around biohacking. So we're starting to get those kind of fictional stories too. Now we're getting into modern times. The movie Ready Player One, and a Netflix movie that not too many people have been talking about, but it's great. Anon. You should check it out. There's a movie called Kimi, and this is when I entered the scene. So I published my first novel in 2022, Identified, heavily focused on privacy things. 2023, if you're into nonfiction and security, cyber conflict, AI, I recommend this book. This is exploring where we might be headed in terms of international conflict in the age of cyber and AI. A lot of interesting things in that book. And now we're at modern times. I published my latest book less than a month ago. So that wraps it up. I just want to mention that you can find me on the web, on Mastodon. I will have a signing table here. I think we have 10 copies of each of my 2 books. So if you're interested, you can go buy them there. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Really interesting talk. So now we're going to try the things that Swedes are famous for, is asking questions. Anyone has a question? We have. I love you. You can stay. I prepared.
I think you're getting a microphone, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, hello. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. What about William Shatner's Tech War?
Sorry?
William Shatner's Tech War.
Tech War?
Yes, T-E-K War.
So when did this come out?
It was like during the 1980s. It
Ah.
was a shadow writer. It was not William Shatner himself who wrote it. He was just like the face of it.
Well, I love this. I have something new to check out, right? Gotta add it. Thank you so much.
I also recommend some video games like System Shock as well, but you have to look into deep in that. Thank you for the presentation, though.
Yep.
Anyone else? I actually have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So let's say you're going to recommend 3 books that everyone here should look into. Which ones?
I think Neuromancer is just, the language is very complicated. It takes a lot to read that thing. Yeah. I read it in Swedish first, but so maybe I won't recommend that one. Snow Crash is a little easier and really, it's a big one. So I probably put Snow Crash in there. Demon by Daniel Suarez is just so awesome. Very violent, though, so if you don't like that, then maybe you shouldn't read it. Let me think. Well, Stig Larsson's, right, Män som hatar kvinnor, or the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that's just straight up great. It's called Scandinavian noir, right? The crime genre from Scandinavia. Great book.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Help me thanking Jan for a great talk. Thank you very much for coming.